Hey, what's up, everyone? We're back. I am Kale Smith, joined by Kevin Abbott, Matt Shambari, and Dave Ewing. This group is handling some very specific questions. We have a lot of the gameplay, hero design, HUD, UI questions, very gameplay impacting stuff here. So hopefully we can get to a lot of these questions that you guys have presented for us. And again, if you have any questions that you're asking in chat, I was looking at the chat a little bit, make sure to head over to the Reddit AMA and ask your question there. We have another group that's Joe Harrington, who's our lead systems designer, Nathan Mooney, and John Leitz, senior programmer, answering questions over on Reddit currently right now. I also saw a couple people from the previous groups still in that Reddit thread answering questions. So if you have any questions, we unfortunately are not looking at chat right now. Send them over to Reddit and ask there. That way we can kind of look at them and see what you guys are saying and asking. You guys ready?
Yes,
sure. Do it.
All right.
This is a fun group. Here we go.
We only have one general question. So this is from Trip Nichols. Trip Nichols. And again, I'm sorry. I'm going to murk your names. I apologize. I'm going to do better than Mooney did, though. For sure.
It's a low bar.
Trip Nichols, I don't want to offend anyone in Epic, but is there any discussion on changing certain names of the main 13 characters? My only issues are Twin Blast and Steel. I find the names more like something they were named when in production, and it just stuck with them.
Why would you think that, man?
He has two guns. We shall call him Twin Blast. He has a steel shield. We shall call him Steel. He shall be Steel. That's all. You're beautiful.
Yeah.
This guy, he knows.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
You nailed it. Totally. Yeah, you got us.
Yep.
Those two in particular. You missed one, though. The other one, whose code name came through right to the end, was Muriel. So, yeah, I don't know.
It's not that we didn't try. It wasn't for a lack of trying.
No.
We threw out names,
Yeah.
but the process for naming heroes or anything in the game is grueling. I mean, we have some vicious critics.
Talk about bad habits to break too.
Yeah.
In terms of how we talk about them internally.
Yeah.
I keep talking about internal names and people are like, "Who's that guy? I don't even know who that is."
Yeah, happens all the time for sure.
So yes, you caught us.
Yes, 100%. That is what happened.
HUD and UI questions.
All right.
You ready?
Yes.
All right. Severon. Hope I got that right. Severon. If you get around to updating tooltips, can you add duration to slow abilities like Dark Tether and Serenity, and to the stuns like Stasis Bomb and Boulder Throw?
Yes, absolutely. So, we've been working a lot with Joe Harrington in terms of what we should put in the tooltip, what we shouldn't. We've got some considerations. I've got to make sure that you can fit it all in-game. And so we've kind of got this short description for in-game and a longer description out-of-game. The goal is that any value that's important should definitely show, especially in-game. It's just a matter of trying to shrink those numbers down so that we can actually fit them without taking up your entire screen when you want to upgrade and things like that. But those both sound like important numbers that we should work into the tooltips.
Okay.
Yeah, we at least have the ability to do it. It's just getting it all in there.
Yeah,
so all that stuff will get better as we go for sure.
Yep.
Edward Salmon, I believe this is on the same thread. He said, yeah, we need better explanations too, like how the hell do Murdoch's traps work? Timer plus no max number, timer plus max number of traps, no timer plus max number. Also, how does leveling it affect these things?
I can actually tell you because I double checked with Billy Rivers, who's the designer for Murdoch. So I got the numbers for sure. You can have, at all levels, you can have 4 traps out. They do a slow and a damage. The damage gets increased as you level it, and the cooldown gets decreased. And they will all stay out for 5 minutes or until they're triggered. There you go.
Amazing if that was in game. You didn't have to watch a live stream in order to see it.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll improve that definitely.
Yeah.
Kick It Cool, who had some questions in the first group. Do you tie the balance numbers from the UI tooltips directly to the variables that hold those values, essentially being auto-updated as they are changed internally?
Yes, definitely. We don't have a team of people who are just constantly updating tooltips every time the balance numbers change.
Right.
No, we just type in, it's essentially like a little variable, this rich text thing, and it just updates and it pulls the value right from the game, including as those numbers change over time as you level up, things like that.
Okay. Swatches.
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
I could be
I
swats.
think it's swatches.
Swatches.
Yeah.
Sure.
Swatches. Are you planning on allowing players to view hero stats without being at base? Will the stats be dynamic? Example, activating steel shield block will show the armor increase plus movement speed reduction.
Yes, definitely. So there's actually two different pieces of this. One is I'd love to be able to have all the stats or some form of stats kind of visible at all times so that you can see what's going on, especially as you get a slow or as, the examples here. Getting it in there is important so you can see how it's changing and what's affecting you. But the other part of it too is being able to see the shop while you're out in the field as well. Obviously you can't interact with it, but we'd love for you to be able to see the specific cards out there. I know many times I'm hitting B to go back to base and I want to start thinking about my next card. I hit G and I'm like, we just got to add that. There's some minor tech things that we have to overcome, but we'll be able to get that in.
Okay. This is all from Swatch. Will you guys be enhancing tooltips to show more detailed stats at all times?
Yeah, that's basically the same
That's
question.
the same question.
Yes, as before. Yes, definitely. We want to add as much information as possible. No information is purposely being held secret. It's a matter of fitting it and getting around to being able to make some changes so that we can get as much information as we can on the screen.
Right. This next question, again, more along the same lines. And lastly, will you guys add information to the tooltips that explain additional benefits gained from upgrading?
Yes, so it is there now. The example
there.
that is in the question there with Feng Mao's mad dash distance travel, that should be there. If it's not there, then we should add it. The idea is that the little upgrade square that's right next to the description should have every stat for every number that changes. If there is one that we're missing, that was just an oversight, and we should fix that.
Let's see here.
To be clear, sorry, there are still a lot that are missing, and
Yes.
we're trying
Yes.
to get them in. It just takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Any chance you guys will be adding an option to turn off Deck Builder's autosave function? Now, this is a really edge case one, but I know it's a real pain in the ass for people like me who like to modify decks mid-queue or just theory craft with no real intention of saving over my current deck, only to find it force saved.
Yeah, this is an interesting one where, we had some feedback before that, people would accidentally quit out or they didn't realize that they needed to hit save, or they wanted to quickly save because of that same mid-queue problem that you're describing. And so we went with the autosave idea because that felt like just a safer way where it's always updating. You can never really kind of mess up except for the specific case that you're talking about here. It strikes me as a possible thing that we can add as an option that you can always autosave or not. We're constantly looking at this stuff, and one of the cool things with early access is that we can try different things. So before we didn't have autosave, now we have autosave. We can look at what happens out there, what the feedback is, and then decide what's best. Maybe what's best is an option, maybe just one particular direction that is correct. But yeah, we're definitely talking about this. This is feedback we've heard before.
Fleeland, when will there be a separate slider for the music?
Right. That should not be particularly hard to add. As you could probably guess, looking at the settings screen, we're in desperate need of a pass on that, making it a lot better and adding more options and things like that. It hasn't been super high on our radar because a lot of other things that we're building right now are things like the cards and the HUD and stuff like that. We want to make sure the core game is solid, but there's lots of good reasons why you want to change the slider. So I'll bring that back to the team and see if we can just sneak that one in.
Okay. Taken number. Are there any plans to implement third-person camera control, like changing the view angle or depth? Sounds like FOV is what he means here. It's hard to tell the reach of some hero skills.
So I can take that one. I will say we spend a ton of time trying to get cameras just right for abilities because, yeah, we totally realize it's way harder to tell depth from a third-person camera than it is from the isometric stuff like Dota and League. But that all said, there's a lot of edge cases that would come up if we let players just have their own control. There'd be ways that you could probably, cheat a little bit and get a view that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. Not to mention, I think it's just really hard to implement. Could get
Right.
So I don't think so.
One of the things, and I just want to hit on this to talk about the exploit portion of this, with a game like Gears, for example, third-person camera, if you are sitting in cover, for example, and you use the camera, you can kind of see around the corner before someone can see you. So in a way, right, like you mentioned, being able to use an exploit to the advantage. I think a lot of people don't realize it's like once you pull back the camera, you can do all sorts of things. So like, let's say someone doesn't have their camera all the way pulled back, right? And they're coming through the jungle, and then you turn your camera, and then you get to see around this exploit, and they don't, or see around the corner, and they don't get to see you because of the third-person camera in some of those.
Especially with the way our jungle canopy
Right,
works too.
right,
If you've got a camera that can pop you can pull it back far enough to pop it out of the canopy and see in lane
Right.
where you
So,
will be able to see.
or for instance, instead of having to go line of sight on the orb prime, you sit behind it on
Sure,
in an
peek
area
over
where
the
you don't have to-
wall.
and then you look over the wall, right? So there's all types of cases like that. For
Yeah,
sure.
this actually touches on something that a lot of people may not think about, but when we're thinking about different options that we might add, we want to make sure there's no wrong options, right? And so something like this, if there's an option that's just plain better for gameplay, well, maybe we should talk about that as being the correct thing that what we do, but you don't want to add an option where you have to know to go into the options menu and change something to actually have an advantage in the game.
We should, yeah, especially with like, custom camera modes for abilities and things like that. We're trying to do that. We're always trying to make that better. So all the feedback you guys have on that is super important.
Let's see here. We're at Raw Stanky. Will we ever get better? I'm sorry. There was another question from Take a Number. How about a toggle in the options for enabling circle around your hero with basic attack range? I don't quite understand that.
I think what this person's talking about is, the idea that basic attacks have a certain amount of range, right? And so when you're within range, the reticle changes and kind of there's a little arrows that pop up letting you know that this attack is going to hit.
You also now get a big highlight on the character you're about to hit and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I think he's talking about like actual outlines on the ground
Right.
saying you're going to affect this area
Okay.
if you hit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be a little concerned on how that would look in play. I mean, but we're definitely aware that range and telegraphing range to the player is really important, so we're going to keep iterating on that.
All right, now we're on the Raw Stanky. Will we ever get a better listing of skills of base damages and scaling? Right now, it's very confusing. Kind of answered this before.
Yeah.
Right now, it's very confusing in game on certain characters when you try to do new builds in game. Sort of like how League has base scaling would help a lot.
Yeah, so we've actually talked specifically about that, where you have the number and then like a plus, how much the scaling you got from cards, things like that, or from levels. And yes, we definitely want to do that. We just need to get the time to actually go in and make those changes. But yeah, so it's a great idea. It's something that I would find very helpful. How much came from leveling? How much came from cards? Like,
Right.
it's really important to get those details so you know how to play the game correctly or to your style.
Washington Fitz. Have you thought about more filtering options? For example, I would love to filter by number of card points or by affinity type. Furthermore, there should be some sort of vault or case where I can see all the cards I currently own. Thoughts? I actually saw something.
Yes to all of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So more filtering options are definitely coming. We're working on that right now. We actually just got some designs in that show all the different filtering options, and it's actually going to be a lot better than that drop down that we just reintroduced into the game. So we've got some cool ideas with that. And then also, yes, we are adding a card list. That will be very, very soon in a patch coming to you. It will list all the cards. And like everything in this game, we are iterating on it. So it's going to come out in a very basic form, but you'll be able to see all cards that you own, all cards that exist. But some of the advanced things like filters and stuff like that, we'll layer it in over time. We don't want to hold back features from you. For them to be perfect. We'd rather just get this out because it's already going to be useful, and then we'll continue to improve it over time.
This is from Take a Number again. Please add double-click support for choosing card deck in the beginning of the match.
So that sort of exists in the idea that you can click the slot button and that will auto slot it into kind of the best slot. If it's a passive or an active card or whatever. So you kind of get that, but yeah, double click doesn't seem insane either. Yep.
Okay. Fashion Cop. Just wanted to say, great job at making cards in our deck stack again. It was coming. Thank you. They were all shown individually when cards linking was brought into the game, and I saw and agreed with a large amount of people who didn't like the fact that the cards no longer stacked in the deck building screen. Do you guys fix these so quickly because the community wanted you to, or was it a mix-up with development? If it was because the community gave it negative feedback, I just want to say bravo. I would love to have that been the case.
It's actually a mixture of both, to be honest. So I wouldn't say it was a mix-up with development. What happened was when we introduced card linking, there was actually a distinction between this particular strike card that was linked and this one that was unlinked. And so you'd have to be able to choose those two separately, right? And so that was the main reason why we splayed them to begin with. And then, honestly, we did just run out of time to get back to the point of restacking the unlinked ones. And instead of holding the whole feature, we thought it was better to get the feature out, start getting feedback on card linking and the new deck builder. And then just this past patch, I believe, right? It was just re-added? Yes, that is live. Okay. Sometimes I have trouble keeping track of what's made it out live and not. But yes, Yes, it was also because we saw some feedback coming in. It was interesting because this one we wanted to experiment a bit and see, well, in some ways, splaying them out, you kind of get a little bit more visual parsing where you can see how many have been grayed out and how many are bright.
Right.
And it's a little bit easier than reading the little X5, X4
Yeah.
for at a glance. But at the same time, having a screen full of cards was kind of annoying as
Right.
well. So we were just looking to see, did this actually improve things or not? And so when we saw the feedback, we kind of had our finger on the trigger ready to go with putting the stacking back in. And we were, we were happy to, once we saw the feedback, just put it back in the next batch.
Okay. We are on Orange Dawn. What does the Paragon team think about giving us players the option to turn off or toggle friendly minion health bars? Always an advocate for less clutter, or at least the option. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that one strikes me as a pretty reasonable option. There's lots of reasons why you'd want to see your friendly health bars, but if you find them to be cluttered, I think there's no problem in turning that off for you. You might have a little bit less information, but that's kind of the trade-off that you'd be making if you wanted to remove that.
Archdevil 1, I think he's been in here a couple times now. Could it be possible to have like a statistic or leaderboard, something regarding decks or equipment, so when I create a deck, I can see that 90% of Murdochs, or the most successful winning Murdochs, statistic based on MMR, ELO, or KDA, use micro nuke with the specific upgrades, and from there I have the choice to improve the deck or use what others are using. Something like in-game meta decks or meta items used. This is like a recommended feature.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love the
It's a really
idea,
cool idea, yeah.
of pulling data from the game, and we have the data, so we can start pulling data from the game and saying, micro nukes have a 70% win chance or whatever it happens to be. We actually had some conversations too for what that would look like, how we could make that work. It's a matter of getting to it, but yes, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it can really help kind of spur community discussions, things like that. So yeah, it's great.
Okay. Washington Fitz, will there be some sort of glossary in the game or something similar, a place where we can get in-depth information such as length of shadow wards or what time harvesters are available and when?
Yeah, so I also like the idea of getting in-game glossary. So some of it could be in the front end where you can kind of look up in some kind of help menu type thing and see all the information. But also a lot of this we actually want to just get in-game. There's no reason that this stuff is secret, right? The 3-minute mark for the harvesters, the 6-minute for the outside ones, like we could just put timers right in the game. And we've talked about this a bit too. This is not secret information. We want you to have as much information in the game so that you can make the decisions that you need at the right time.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to say, Dave and Kevin, you guys ready? Because we're getting close to the
Let's do it.
to nitties. All right. Trunks. Man, a square? I'm a Trunks.
I
That's
think
what
it's
I'm
Trump's
calling you.
QT.
Trunks Cutie?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, I can roll
Just
with
going out
that.
on a limb, guys. Sorry. I'm not a Twitch expert.
I thought it was squat, so.
Yeah.
Will you guys please tell me if you are, put a damage counter in the game so we can see how much damage our friends and foes have done during and or after the match?
Yeah, so scoreboard data and stats and stuff like that, we want to add as much as possible. You want to be a little bit careful with some of the stuff that you put on the scoreboard in game because you don't want to necessarily send the wrong message.
Right.
Like is this, damage done is a pretty obvious one. Damage taken is another one that's useful for tanks, but do you really want to show damage taken and like the highest person is a sparrow or something like that? So yeah, we'll discuss it definitely. I mean, this stuff is important to us. We want to make sure there's as much info as possible. Putting it out of game, putting it in the scoreboard at the end of the game or into your own stats as well, that all seems totally reasonable. But in game, we just want to make sure we don't send the wrong message that you should be doing this because the game, it's about objectives and things like that. It's not just about raw damage.
Right. So I put this question on here, but I'm fairly certain we rotate it quite frequently. But this is from
Sometimes,
Giant Chaprel. Why is Sparrow still a recommended champion when she is the only champion without any mobility spells or some form of escaping/disengage? She may be simple to play, but if anything, she requires much more knowledge, positioning, and map awareness to play than any other ranged character, i.e. why recommend her over Twin Blast to new players?
Yeah, so that's a...
It's reasonable. I mean, I think
it
that's
is-
actually
it is
way more
actually.
contested than we thought that would be when we put those stars down. So those could always be made, improved upon, and I think that's a reasonable point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think probably the thinking was with Sparrow is because she's mostly just like damage, and more damage is kind of point your
Yeah.
your reticle at something and make it die,
Yeah.
and you don't have to worry about much of other stuff at a very low level.
Yeah.
It's like
That
bot
was
game
probably
Sparrow
right.
would be
Right.
like, all right,
Right.
like, it's like,
Yeah.
that would be
Right.
okay.
However, all that said, I think I agree with you. I think
Yeah.
Team Blast
I agree
probably
with that
Fair
as
point,
well.
for sure.
We actually use data as well for this. We look at our analytics and see, which characters are most successful with new players, and so that's why some of the shuffles have happened. But we'll look at the data again for Sparrow because I don't disagree with you, but she is straightforward at least.
Yeah. All right. Now we're on to gameplay. Matt, you burned through those.
Oh,
That was
I talk fast.
Handled.
I can't help it.
That was awesome. Severon, can we know the percentage that Decker shares with her allies from her passive? Can we know the amount of movement speed that Alacrity grants to
The shields.
Yeah, like,
ally shields? The tooltip doesn't say, and I can't find it in the community kit.
That is one of those things that should definitely be on the ability tooltip. And as Matt was talking about, we totally have the ability to do that. It's just a matter of making sure all the information relevant to, how the ability proves when you level it up, what actually happens value-wise on the ability will be up there, and we'll be good.
Okay. Flealand, will you guys address the weakness of towers in any way?
So if you look at time to kill, we're actually pretty close to in line with other MOBAs.
Yeah.
I think where things start to break down a little bit, perhaps, maybe, is when Rampage jumps in there, almost dies, and then ults and sits in there for another 5 minutes, and then,
Yeah.
and then jumps away. So we'll get to that later in this, I promise. But yeah, they are close to as far as time to kill goes. They're close to other MOBAs.
Okay.
They're not too weak.
Lundius, any chance of us getting a complimentary caster card similar to Agorn Scepter's unique? For example, unique 50% spell damage increase. I feel this would help out casters without returning them to their overtuned state of OT3, OT4, edited for potato grammar and spelling.
That's awesome.
It's so nice of you to qualify that. Yeah, so in terms of like how casters scale, ultimately the goal as we have it right now is to have the carry scale better than anybody else in the late game. What we can improve upon is making casters do better in their phase of the game, right? There's a couple things we can do there. For a 50% spell damage increase on a 1 card, that doesn't seem like a very compelling card, even though it's sort of become the exact same thing with the crit damage one. So that's something we have to revisit. We definitely want to give players choice in that matter. So ultimately I think this is more a question about getting casters back to do better when they're supposed to, and I think we can totally do that without necessarily adding a card that everybody's going to have in every deck all the time.
There definitely will be a lot more cards added as we
Yeah.
go along that help
Yeah.
out specifically abilities and not left click. So,
Yeah,
but maybe not exactly the 50% one.
absolutely.
Salty 21DB, when will we be seeing stat caps / stop card stacking to slow down the hunter spam that controls in game?
So is that like, I guess I'm assuming that's kind of about like duplicate cards or
Like-
something, or
Like 4 micro.
the 4 micro
Yeah.
nick build. Okay, so ultimately we need to do a better job of getting the stats to be. We need to have proper stat tension on the characters, right? Murdoch in particular has a really slow base attack time, so crit damage and damage is really all you need to. Even though it's not the optimal build in terms of DPS, it's the optimal in terms of making the guy you're shooting at freak out, be like, "What the hell? You just did 1,500 damage or whatever," right? So I think that we can do things like that. In terms of like the duplicate cards specifically, it's really a card balance question and just making sure that's done better. So yeah, I mean that's where I'm at with that essentially.
Let's see here. This is back to Trip Nichols. I love this game so much. So first off, thank you. Well, thank you, Trip.
Thank you.
Will you be setting us up with exact numbers and math for certain attributes like lifesteal, how much physical attacks do against enemies, building armor, etc.? That's the first question. Second question is, will there be any explanation on experience and experience sharing in game? How much bonus EXP do we receive for last hitting? Kind of goes back to like some UI stuff.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
just making not we're not trying to hide anything, right? It's just
Yeah.
a matter of making sure everybody knows it and it's in a place where the information is accessible, and that's like an ongoing thing, right? We're always
is.
trying to do a better job there.
Archdevil 1, back again. If minions don't hit Iggy and Scorch's turrets, Iggy and Scorch's turrets are ignored by the lane minions, and the lane minions don't interrupt travel mode. Is it normal that turrets root us in travel mode?
So-
Yeah, that's partially solved now, where it shouldn't be shooting you if you just leave it in the middle of nowhere, right?
It will if he's not standing by.
Yeah. Okay.
But that said, I mean that's part of the strength of his turrets.
Yeah.
Right.
is
You're
that
not
kind
going
of
to gank him easily.
Right.
Yeah. Would mention too that travel mode is something that we've been iterating on for a long time and will be iterating on for quite
Yeah.
some time as well. So who knows what happens to the route
Right.
and how long it stays and whether things like turrets affect it later on.
Right.
But for now, yep, that's intended.
Kodakai, what's Epic's view on 3T wards? Cards being stupidly strong.
Sure.
3-point wards.
Watch
Yeah,
day
right.
finals.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's talking about Agora Rising. And nearly everyone started
Yeah.
wards and proceeded to place 10 wards each side, recalled, and continued throughout the game. It feels too safety netted. 2 shadow wards for 3-point with unlimited refills is ridiculously cheap. Personally, I feel like it needs to be altered. For example, 3-point cards replaced with normal wards and an upgraded version for 5 to 6 points with the shadow plane wards. Now, before I have to
Yeah.
let you guys answer this, it's interesting because when we first talked about this, the first group kind of mentioned, like, if you play in game right now and some of the new players that are coming in, there's hardly any wards.
Yeah. What
being
game
placed,
were we
right?
talking about?
Yeah.
What's it like?
And even for some of the, I would say, moderately experienced players, there's not a lot of wards use. But then when you get to that next level of play, you see those guys played a completely different game almost, where, there was a bunch of wards, constant pings, and it's like they understand the flow while other people are still kind of learning. So that's kind of how I want to present it. But feel free.
I think
There's also a
that's-
quick counter to Death Ball too. I'll just saying.
Yeah. the last one has there is you should have to invest to sacrifice to gain map vision. Well, that's 100% true, right? This is kind of about we need to get a better understanding of what we want vision to behave like in our game, right? We all think it's crucial in MOBAs that vision plays a really important role, right? That has to be limited. It has to be valuable to do it, and it has to cost you something. So in terms of what we have now, where the top players obviously saw, it's like, hey, we can have like 15 wards out, which is crazy compared to other MOBAs and stuff. And if you use that correctly, then you're going to have great vision. So I think we just need to evaluate that balance, what it costs versus what you get. And we're constantly looking at stuff like that. The competitive guys we have playing all the time are constantly harping us about this. So it's really just making sure we have good goals of the vision game, and then making sure that we make the cards accomplish those goals. Like an upgradable card is something that could totally happen, right? That's a totally viable solution. Yeah.
Agreed that those 3-point word cards are pretty strong right
Yeah.
now, and we'll probably be looking at those in the near future.
Hero design and balance.
Yay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
It's all perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
That's our answer for this.
Our first question from Kalari Bot. I have a question about balancing. To get balance, you either need to make some heroes stronger or some weaker. I would rather see weaker heroes made stronger than current OPs weaker. A lot of strong and fun characters rather than a lot of weak and not so fun characters. What's your take on this, and how you want to approach balancing? Would you rather make all heroes strong or nerf hammering all the OPs?
Well, the answer to this question is it depends, right? Balancing, as we see it, is about establishing targets, right? And making sure that you hit those targets. So let's say 80% of your hero roster, fits that target, right? It's a lot easier to fix the 20% that don't fix it than make all the 80%, nerf the 20% and make all the 80% stronger, right? It's really just about the issue comes with make sure we're establishing really clear targets, right? One of the things that's I'm sure will come up in this almost positive will come up in these questions is about shooters in our game and what that means. And frankly, our targets on shooters are pretty loose, and you guys are really helping us shape those. So when we're talking about Murdoch or the shooters in general, right? In general, the target is off. Like they're doing too much damage, or we decided on a target and we set them to reach that target, and that target's no longer working for us, right? So the first step is picking a better target and adding additional targets so we get the right kind of distribution of power that we want there. But the strong and make everything overpowered is kind of like it's not a reality, right? It's not a good strategy, right? The better strategy is to decide what you want and then make the game work, how you expect.
Right. Yeah. Do you and this is kind of I want to rabbit hole in this just for a second because
Sure.
this is more like
Yes.
hero design philosophy and stuff like that. One of the things I think is really interesting in any game I've ever played, especially where there's classes, let's say class-based shooters or MOBAs, what we kind of do differently, and this is kind of talking about more about future and rank and the environment is if I play my specific hero, I don't necessarily know what my teammates are going to choose. So a lot of players play some of the ADCs or carries in our game, and so if they don't get teammates that complement those heroes, then it kind of makes this, I want to have this power-hungry game where the only thing that matters is kills, deaths.
Yeah, it's like no matter what my team goes, I'm going to have a good game.
And right. So
and that's,
I think part of it is like I want the community to kind of help us establish, okay, Gideon is not supposed to be a carry. So the expectation there for him is he needs to push lanes, he needs to get towers, or Sparrow, whoever. It's about better defining like what the roles are, and so that people, when they come into the game, kind of understand. Okay, if I want to play this, this is the style I need to have. If I want to play this hero, this is my constraints. I can kind of go this way, I can kind of go that way, but mostly I'm about pushing towers, being a contributing teammate in that manner. So I'm kind of wondering like how you guys feel about the direction for heroes that we're going to take that more kind of pays that path going forward.
I think that's really a thing. Like, so let's talk about shooters again, because that's sort of what this all comes back to right now, because that's in the eye of everybody. You know, they're supposed to be really strong late game. There could be there's a couple things going on here, right? They're peaking too early, right? And they're bleeding into the space that's supposed to be dominated by other heroes, right? Like Rift Mage or the fighters are supposed to do better in that early and mid game, but those the Murdoch gets his crit going so quick that it's like he's eclipsing that whole phase of the game. So that's totally how we're trying to design the game, is to just kind of pick the phases of the game, and there should be strengths for every hero, right? There shouldn't be like a guy who after 15 minutes is just the best, right? It should be like you should suffer as a shooter for most of the game, and if you're having a game and farming well, you're having a game, right? But you should never start running around the map killing everybody. That's not what the hero is designed for, right? There's Kalari needs to do a better job of that, or the mages or the junglers are supposed to kind of handle that early game pressure, and then they kind of peter out as you get into that space where the economy of the carry really kicks in, right? So it's really about making our meta more clear to the players, and that's something we're working on all the time right now. It's like our primary focus is to try and establish the peaks and valleys for each hero, and why you take this guy, and why he goes mid, and why that kind of stuff. We need to have a better answer for all those questions, because you're right. I mean, right now it's true that for a lot of players, there's really no reason. Like, I don't know who's going to be on my team. I don't know if I don't have a support on. I'm just going to pick Murdoch and hope for the best.
Right.
And you can do so much with that character right now that it's just it's not hitting the design target, right? Yeah. So it's just, again, it comes back to just making sure those design targets are hit.
Okay.
From a hero design standpoint too, I mean, more rabbit holing, I guess, but there's also a question about this later on.
Yeah.
Having that meta established will help us define roles for our heroes, and makes it a lot easier to design them. You can design them with specific strengths and weaknesses in mind for that specific role, and I think that'll make the heroes stronger, easier to play, easier to figure out, and just stronger and not in strength, but I mean like more solid, I guess. Right?
How important is it to make sure that players understand like the strengths and weaknesses from a hero design standpoint in general?
I think it's super important, really. I mean, you can have a really frustrating time playing a hero in a way that his kit is not set up to play. If you want to start trying a Twin Blaster Sparrow and run up into people's faces and into the middle of three people and think that you're gonna just burn them down, that's rough. But if you know what your role is, you can play to their strengths so much better, and you'll just have a lot more fun playing the game, I think, and have a better experience.
Okay. So Raw Stanky, will we ever get... Wait,
Raw Stanky, my man.
Is this the same question?
I think it might be.
No.
It's a new question, I think.
It's a new question. Yeah. Will we ever get better listing on skills? It's kind of silly. Right now it's very... Yeah, it is. We're below this one. Yeah. Erroneous H, what kind of new mechanics are we going to see from some of the new heroes coming soon? Stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't really talk. Yeah. We don't want to sort of blow any of our big reveals coming up, and it'd be cool to just talk about some sort of mechanics or specific abilities. But in a vacuum, it's kind of hard to know why that's cool. You have to sort of see it in along with the rest of the kit to see why that specific mechanic or ability is cool. So I think we're just gonna leave that one.
I will tease. I am looking forward to some of the upcoming kits. Tactical Kid.
No, Tat Cool Kid.
Tat Cool Kid.
No, Tat like dat, but Never mind.
Oh,
I'm just trying to help you out, man.
Tap Cool Kid.
Tap
Okay.
Cool Kid. I think that's right.
I think I still think
You're
it's
actually pretty good at this, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Saying.
Yeah. I'm gonna just
Read a
bring
lot of
one every
usernames
time.
in my time. I think I know what people are after.
He says, I know you guys are aware of the problem. What are your measures for the current dominating glass cannon meta? We kind of talked about this.
Yeah, this is again. It's about this is getting better stat tension, encouraging player. Like one of the things that's come up a lot on the forums and on Reddit and stuff is like, resistances are hard to make the argument to invest for, right? If I'm going to invest, I might as well just do health, and even health isn't as good. So the just having better stat tension on some of those things will help a lot. And again, it's about the glass cannon guy who shoots for 1,000,000 miles away. It's again about that peaking too quickly and just having good goals for heroes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Lazy Bomber. Can we expect heroes with mechanics that will involve high skill level to play? Paragon is the first MOBA I've gotten into, but in the past I had a friend try to teach me Dota 2. Some of the heroes had really interesting mechanics that not everyone would be able to just pick up and go with, hoping to see that high skill, high reward kind of character.
So, every hero designer wants to build a really complicated, cool, super hard to master hero. It's just, it's more fun for sure from a design standpoint to answer all those questions. But especially when you're just trying to spin up a game, we're trying to figure out what these roles are and what the meta is. It's so much better to have sort of simpler, very focused heroes.
Like a lot of those other MOBAs have their matrix filled out, right?
Yes.
They're totally in the all right, now what space? We're still in the like, all right, we still don't have a guy who handles this, who has an expertise of hero or whatever, right? So once we get those things fleshed out and we have a good idea of what the meta looks like, it'll be a lot easier to add these kind of things.
Yeah. So they're definitely coming for sure.
Yeah.
But for a while, we're going to stick with the simpler, more easy to grok heroes.
Patty Big Rig. When will we see more support type heroes added in? Can't say when.
Yep.
But there are a couple in the queue, and one's fairly soon coming up.
Yeah.
Sebedin? Sebedin. That's what I'm going with.
That's stuff
You want to say Sweden?
Sweden?
Yeah, I think Sweden.
Sweden. When can we expect the support balance pass?
Yeah.
That's coming up very soon.
I know. Yes, it's really soon. I'm waiting for you to tell me when.
I want to say it is V25.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I want to say it's V25.
There are lots of
soon?
there are lots of quality of life change gadgets in there as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of quality of life changes in there, and we're still working on meta stuff, so there's still more stuff to come, but we can kind of make things better for a while.
The Perverted Romantic. Any plans to scale skills based on something besides damage, i.e. Rampage's ult base HP gain per rank plus HP percentage?
Yeah. I assume that's talking about like I'm building some other card stat that gives me something
That
else.
gives me some benefit of something else.
We've talked about that a bunch of times. It's definitely possible. We just got to be really cautious of the double dipping of stats, right? One of the issues. This came up with Muriel pretty recently. One of the issues with Muriel specifically is her shields don't scale with anything anymore. There was a couple bugs. I'm not going to go into detail, but there were a couple bugs. So now it's just by level, right? So she scales really well with just getting experience, right? That's how she gets her shield power. We talked about other stuff there. It's just like one of the problems is just the fact that she doesn't have any stat tension because she can just build health and mana and get that stuff for free, right?
Yep.
So we're definitely looking at stuff like that. It's just it's a bigger question. We need to have a real clear idea of what that looks like.
Okay. Phantom Strike? I'm going to go with Phantom
I
Strike.
think that's good.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to rebalance Rampage's ult so that when he dives towers
Yes.
and then hits his ult, when he gets low, that it auto cancels and he doesn't get that healing from it? It's pretty OP right now that he can dive in, own a tower, get low, ult, and heal back to full, all the while absorbing tower damage.
Yes. There's I don't know how much we can talk, but tanks are
Tanks are
definitely
getting a
on the radar.
pass.
They're getting a pass sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Rampage is in that category, and he will have his day.
For sure.
That's a
He will
polite
have
way
his
of
day.
saying expect a Rampage rebalance.
Right.
Jetchi, are there going to be any changes involving Rampage? Again, let's just talked about him.
He will have his day.
Histoka? How do you feel about Iggy? I feel his turret should be 2 hits instead of 3 to kill until late game.
I think he's in fairly good shape right now, but it's one of those things. He just came out. He's only been out for a week or
week,
whatever, right?
yeah.
We need to let him sit and let people get used to playing and knowing when to shoot him. It might be that if we knee jerked into this reaction, well, anyone playing Twin Blast realizes that now no Iggy could ever counter me because I'll just burn down his turrets too fast. But we'll land on something good. We just need to let it sit for a bit.
Yep.
Salty 21DB. When will be seeing changes to
guy
Rampage?
Yeah.
He doesn't just dive tower, just jump into prime without contention, or just constantly jump so far away that he can never be killed.
Yep.
Just talked about Rampage.
Mm-hmm.
Salty.
Yep. Rampage will be salty.
Messy Cans. Why do all casters have the same AA base damage, AA scaling damage, HP, attack speed rating, etc.? Do you think that they should be sharing the same stats like they do now?
I think this is really just about. So this isn't a caster is really about their abilities. If there's a good reason to differentiate these things, we absolutely will. As we get a better idea of what balance looks like, we can shape these more, differently and make them feel a little different. Let's say if there's an ability that works off of, every time I put something on you, every time I hit you, it does some effect, right? Like then it might warrant that caster having a higher base stack speed or something like that, right? But until we reach that point, we just want a good reason to do it. We're not opposed to it. It's not specifically intended. It's just we need a good reason to change that.
The other thing is, I think if those things were all over the place, it would kind of muddy the heroes up a little bit. It wouldn't be the kits that sort of define the heroes. That would play a big part of it. And want to avoid that.
NK Sharp, does using energy/physical penetration on opponents who don't have any defense against this then just do more damage, or is there no point at all?
I believe right now it should just zero you out. We've talked about like negative armor or negative resistance, things like that. So that's still something we can look at. But as of right now, it doesn't.
But there is. I was just talking to Joe. He was saying there is definitely a little bit of resistance, inbuilt resistance and armor into all characters.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I
so we'll always do something.
Absolutely,
for sure.
right. Yeah.
Even if they don't have armor.
Right.
Cards.
Kodokat. Would you add more flexibility in roles and builds? We kind of touched on this a little bit. Currently, players wouldn't build stats not fitting their hero role at all. Damage stats are completely useless on supports. Base attack stats are bad for casters. No carry ever gets cooldown reduction or utility items. I like to see it being more like Dota, where anyone can do anything and many heroes can be played in completely different styles and positions.
So some of the stuff we can get in that vein, it will come in the form of cards. I think that right now we're really just stat heavy on cards. So when opportunities are like you look at like Force Staff or Blink Dagger in Dota, right? There are choices there where you're opting to not take stats and take some kind of utility, right? So we're going to start to get a lot of that gameplay just for free. And on top of that, the other stuff we're working on shrinking that gap in terms of like how casters scale versus fighters and things like that. We still want to differentiate them because we're building kits kind of around what the playstyle is, or else we're going to muddy our whole strengths and weaknesses and meta, right? So I think shrinking it and making it more viable as we get a better idea of what the game looks like is totally on the table. It's just we just need the time to make sure we know why we're doing things like that. Yeah.
Let's see here. Skatelig. Will any stance-changing characters be released? Can't specifically answer this, but will any stance-changing characters be released? Characters whose abilities change depending on what stance they're in. Dave, you kind of hit this. It's like, hey, we would love to design complex characters. Right now, we need to focus on.
I tell you what, I guarantee at some point there will be a stance-changing character.
There's no doubt.
However, it goes back to trying to keep simpler heroes and more focused at this point.
Waffle Lightning, are y'all going to be creating champions, heroes, in order to make a meta, i.e. supports, tanks, ADC, etc., or will you be focused on making them in such a way that they don't fill a certain role, but rather unique in their own right? That's a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, I think the meta is going to drive a lot of our hero design, and that's sort of what we're really trying to flesh out right now. So you can kind of see that there's like the laning phase is familiar to MOBA players. The mid game kind of gets a little bit ambiguous in our game, and the late game especially is really ambiguous. So really trying to refine those phases and how the game feels at such and such time and such card power, whatever it is, will really help us make I don't want to say we're going to have like supports can only do this and tanks can only do this, but we do want to create situations where you want heroes that have strengths and mitigation and strengths and offense, things like that. But the first step in that is really just making sure that our meta it makes sense and it's at least partially understood.
Does Epic plan to release new heroes that are the equivalent of League's AP carries, or is the intent to leave late game carrying to the auto attackers?
So right now, it's really when I talk about this, it's more about just what we have right now. If we're going to have a late game carry, they're going to have the same properties as other late game carries, right? They're not going to be the same hero, but they're going to share, certain things, right? So whether it's like a guy who does more ability damage and his ability damage scales particularly later along, on the same kind of level that we can totally do stuff like that. That's just right now. It's just about getting our matrix filled out. But there should be. I mean, there's going to be lots of different ways to carry your team to victory. I'm sure.
What do Muriel's shields scale off of? Protection or energy damage?
Experience, and that is it.
Yes.
It's literally just level over level right now.
Okay. Is support going to become a real class, as in healing, shielding characters, or is this game going to stay away from having more supports like Muriel?
Oh, we're definitely going to have more supports, and definitely going to have more heroes that are Muriel's really just like a mitigator, like a protector,
Right.
whatever you want to call it, right? So mitigation in one format, it can come in like a knockback, or that's like, it's really a concept of I'm mainly here to protect a higher priority guy on my team, right? That's definitely going to live on, I would say, for sure.
Yep. Working on one right now, actually.
Okay.
It's way down the queue. But.
One of the things that I think Steve was talking to me about is about healing specifically. I don't know if we can share too much about the philosophy behind that. I don't know if you guys have talked to it at length.
It's definitely come up
I don't
several
even know
times.
if it's a secret anymore
No,
across
I
all
don't think
MOBAs
so.
at this point. It's just kind of a,
So yeah,
yeah.
sure. I mean, we started with Miro. We actually started her as a healer. We just found it really hard to find that fine line where her abilities, her healing could feel impactful, but not break the game and make it feel like she's resetting every fight to the start. I think just in general with MOBAs, one of the big things is having some sort of sense of permanent progression.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who does a lot of healing, it just removes that a little bit and just slows everything down.
Yeah. When you, specifically in like the laning phase, when it's really about attrition, you're kind of grinding down the resources in terms of health and mana. If there's a guy who can wipe that out, I mean, it's still possible to make. It's just a hard thing to get right when there's still a lot up in the air.
Okay. Messy Cans. Is it intended for 1,000 HP target with 100 HP shield, whom has taken 1,101 hit to only lose the shield?
No, that actually doesn't happen. I
Yeah.
double checked on that just before, just to make sure.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I'm glad
It
I did.
does go through. It takes
Yeah.
off that 100 points of shield and also.
Yes.
Vega 87, Vega X 87. Gadget is a rather weak in early mid game and outshined by other AoE heroes like Iggy Scorch, Gideon, and Howitzer. So will you give her some love?
Yeah, she I think we mentioned earlier, she's in that support balance pass, not just because Gadget's got a particularly low pick rate right now, so we're trying to give her a little bit of love. So there's definitely some good quality of life changes in there that'll help her out for sure.
Okay. Why Murdoch is so powerful? So this question was actually taken before the update, which kind of rebalanced Murdoch. But
so somebody already out there, I don't remember who it was specifically, but they've shown the numbers, and Murdoch, in terms of damage over time, is not as good as the other characters. The reason Murdoch, we think we were so powerful was just because of the really high base damage and the really high crit scaling. It's so even the 4 micro nuke build isn't even the most optimal way you can build them in terms of damage, right? It's the effect that happens when someone just hits you so hard that it changes the dynamic of the team fight and things like that.
Or if you get a lucky streak of crits, too.
Yeah,
You just
right.
happen
So,
to hit 3 in a row.
Yeah, so you look at it because it's really like it hits the kill, right? So this is one of those targets that we can add in now, right? So I talked about a carry should only do this much damage. This is kind of where we want them to be damage wise over time, but we should also look at now we can say things like, all right, we also need to make sure that he can't take 70% of your life in one shot, right? So that could just be another one of those targets that we have to make sure we're hitting, right?
And one other thing to mention with this is again, this is part of the matchmaking environment that we talked about, and not being able to see your team comp. So if you have a Murdoch on Murdoch, or a Murdoch on Twin Blast, or a Murdoch on Sparrow, and the team comp doesn't have a tank,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So the tank, if you build against energy,
Yeah.
can take way more shots
Right.
than some of the DPS characters. So a lot of the reaction is like, I'm a twin blast, maybe I have 1 stack of health, but I just fought this Murdoch who 2-shot me and I didn't 2-shot him, right? So it's like, yeah, you had twin blast versus Murdoch in that engagement.
Yeah.
Where's your tank in that, right? So
Yep.
that's part of it too, and obviously we need to definitely improve upon
Yeah,
that.
I think, I don't know if there's more coming up on this, but the in terms of, we're definitely doing something about shooters. It's just like a lot of stuff came out of it. It's going to just be a bigger change just because of some other stuff we need to work out first. But it's definitely on the table.
Let's see here. Will we see another dedicated ganker like Kalari? This is from Hisoka. And then Turinu. Another question about
That's a lot
Kalari.
of vowels, man.
When will Kalari get the actual help she really needs?
So as far as a dedicated ganker, yep, definitely got a couple in the queue. But again, we can't really say when they're coming.
Right.
But, there is something we've been thinking about for sure. Some more assassins. But as far as the balance goes,
She's one of the, I think Gadget and her, she's one of the kits we're really looking at right now in terms of like, even, one of the situations with Clary is like, well, I either kill you or I don't kill you, and you get away with 1 HP. And both those are bad for the guy who didn't kill you or the guy who you killed and before they could react, right? So there may be some kit issues there we need to work out first. But yeah, she's definitely on our radar as a high priority, hero kit look at.
Okay. We have 10 minutes, so I'm going to let you guys take a break. You guys did a great job answering all these balance questions.
Word.
Community and apps.
sorry, there's one thing. There was a question that Messy Cans answered earlier that I wanted to just add to the is it intended for the? Oh no, go back up. Is it intended for 1,000 hit point target with 100 hit point shield who was taken 1,100 one hit? So I was saying that doesn't happen. That's not to say you didn't see that happen. It very well you could have.
Could have been a bug.
It could have been a bug, or it also I think sometimes you won't see the number pop of the actual damage that's happening behind the shield number pop.
Yes, actually, that I think is.
But I didn't want to
bug.
say. Didn't want you to feel like I was just saying, you saw something. You didn't see it, so.
Yes, I think we do have a number pop bug that I recently saw in the in our bug database that was saying that the number was saying just the shield amount, but the actual damage is doing the right thing, and that's something we'll fix.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's maybe where that came from.
Yeah, sorry, just thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's no problem. Okay, so community, this is from Gately again. As a group of game developers, how do you feel about the community reacting to changes and such you are implementing into the game? So from a community standpoint, I think we're really, we've been in the space long enough to know that when we make changes, anytime we make a change, there's going to be some people that don't like the change, some people that do like the change. For us, I think it's about sort of talking internally about what we expect the expectation to be beforehand, and then trying to parse out and have very open and candid conversations with players on both sides of the fence. If you like it, sure, we want to engage with you. If you don't like it, yes, we want to engage with you. We want to learn why you don't like it. What things can we improve upon? So for us, first off, we try to set expectations internally of what we think something is going to be, and then we kind of say, okay, well, how can we kind of talk about this with people that really enjoy it? What things do they enjoy? How can we make those better? People don't enjoy it. We say, okay, how can we make those things better? What do we need to improve? So that, one, people feel like and know that we actually care about their feedback both ways, but that we're constantly trying to evaluate the best approach for us. So there's regular meetings with lots of people about all aspects of the game. Design team talking to comp team talking to community talking to design, everything. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting new problem for us, I guess, because back in the Gears of War days, it was more about keeping the community, because we started off, as soon as you launch, that's when you have the most people playing your game.
Right.
And it's more about trying to keep the community, whereas what we're trying now is to grow a community. So I think there's probably some differences in how we approach it, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love working on live games like this. I think it's really exciting. I think it's much scarier to work on something kind of in like a bubble and hold on to it and then put it out there and just hope for the best, as opposed to working on it and iterating on it and putting each new form of it out there and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And constantly improving. I think it's a much better way to create a cool game.
Right. JV Morrow, can I have a beta key for my friend? Will Kalari ever be relevant? It's a two-part question. We answered the Kalari thing. Beta key for your friend, I'm sorry, I can't give you one right now, but if you play, what is it, 20? If you get to level 20 and you're in the game, you can have a beta key for your friend. So get on that
Yeah.
hero grind.
Bada
Yeah.
bing. Double XP right now, man. Right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Double XP.
Double XP
Get that
too.
grind on.
This
Yeah.
is your time.
Yeah.
And actually, I recognize the name JV Morrow. He just posted something on Epic on Reddit that I wanted to touch on. He was asking about colorblind, which is something
Oh,
that's really important to me. So yeah, I think game accessibility is really important. And he had asked a question earlier that I did respond to. I wanted the wider audience to see is that yeah, we're very much aware of some colorblind issues in the UI right now. And you know, anytime someone adds, say, a new feature where there's just red and just green, I go over there and give them a visit. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. It's bad for colorblind people. And so, you know, we're working on, you know, some colorblind options at some point, but also in particular, just making sure that when we build something the first time, it's not bad for colorblind players right away. So yes, we're aware of some issues. We're definitely going to fix them. And so, yeah, I recognize your name.
Zinzur said, can I have an early access key? I'm assuming you want access. If you're not participating in the free beta weekend, I believe you have before May 1st to get into next week's open beta weekend, or stress test weekend is what we're calling it, free weekend. So that will be your opportunity there. So if you haven't already, sign up for the beta.
Yeah.
Red Fox Lunatic, this question is slightly off topic as it is not directly related to gameplay. However, it is possible for you guys to make a Paragon screensaver. Imagine having been away for a while and having left your computer on one of the spectacular menus for Paragon. However, when you return, you get to look at a looping camera view of the map going through the different lanes and through the jungle. That actually sounds really cool.
That does sound cool.
That's not really a community question more than it is a art-related question and how we want the game to function. But that would be pretty awesome.
That would be dope. Yeah.
Hopefully you're not doing that in game. That's all I want to. While you're playing, the AFKing is not happening. You're outside in the menus and walk away, get a drink, and come back. Hopefully that's the case.
Paragon screensaver sounds like a great thing for someone in the community to make, though. That's
Yes.
a call to action there.
We have some community kits that have all the heroes and art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Make some screensavers. Sir Intington? Just want to say thanks for making an awesome game and being involved with the community. When are we going to see some teasers for new upcoming heroes? Well, guys, we're going to show you guys something that we have for you guys.
Oh, wow.
We're at the end of the stream. I ended with that specific question. I was smart about this.
Wow.
First off, there's something I want to read you guys. This is an ability. Hold on one second. This is an ability for the upcoming hero that has not been announced yet. This ability locks onto an enemy hero after a short charge up. A high damage gyro targeted force orb.
I like it.
Is fired that homes to the target. The G period, T period, F period, O period passes through geometry and non-hero units. Now there is an image that I believe we're going to share for this hero. And kind of make some guesses on what this is if you want. You can tweet me, you can tweet the official Paragon channel on what you think this hero is and what you think his kit will be. We will have more information very soon, but I appreciate everyone stopping by for the AMA. Great questions. Hopefully we answered to the best of our ability all of your top concerns. We definitely tried to get them all out and up front and be very honest with you guys and transparent as much as we could. But thank you guys for being on and taking the time to do this.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
And
Thanks for playing, guys.
hopefully we'll have another one in the future. But again, like they said, thanks for playing. Make sure you follow the Twitch channel for our upcoming dev stream, and we'll talk about this new hero that we kind of teased today, in addition to some upcoming changes. Catch us on Twitter, Facebook, all of those social places, and we'll see you guys next time.